Thank you.
So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the City Council work session for Minnetrista, May 5th, 2025. And present this evening are myself, Lisa Whalen, the mayor. Council present is Kathleen Refkin, Claudia Lacey, Brian Govern, and staff present remotely is Gary Peters, and then Ann Meyerhoff and Ali Paulfus, and then also here in person is Jasper Krugel and Brian Grimm and David Abel. So with that, we have 4 items on our work session discussion. I want to add one more item if we have time, and that's talking about stormwater questions that the council might have. So starting with that, we're going to do, is that okay with, I see heads nodding, so that's good. Recycling contract extension discussion. Brian or which one?
Yeah, Brian is taking the lead on this one.
All right.
Yes, and
it has to do with money, so I figured Brian was going to talk about it.
Mayor and Council, and I think I maybe saw someone just pull up. Jason Hartman from Waste Management said he was going to be here at 5:30 tonight, so
Okay, that might be him then coming in. Okay.
Shortly, but I think a lot of it stands on its own. I mean, I think he was more just going to be here because I think the last time we approved the contract, actually, I know the last time we approved the contract, it was when we were remote. It was back in June of 2020. So, yeah, he was at least going to introduce himself, and looks like he might be walking in right now. But as far as the agenda item is obviously we've had Waste Management, I think ever since I've been here, so it's going back, 15, 20 years. We've usually done these 5-year contracts with them. Mr. Hartman, right?
Yes.
We've never met in person because we've always just been, I think on the phone the last time I was just telling the council, so.
I apologize for being late. My wife threw me a curveball at the last second, so
Sure.
I had to drop my daughter off at a friend's house.
Yeah, so we were just starting to get into basically the crux of the contract where basically for starting in August of this year, the rate would stay the same. It's still at the $579 a month, and then basically go up about that 4.5% for each of the final 4 years. So that was attached in the packet there on page 3 on the packet, or basically the City of Minnetrista 5-year extension proposal there, 579, 605, and so on. They're basically going up that 30 cents or 4%, 4.5 each year. We still would have the organic drops. I don't think anything's changed yet with the county or the state where we have to go to any curbside organics. We're hoping that's not the case anytime soon. The drop site seems to work for like 5, 10, 15 people use it.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. We're gonna.
And I'll just give you a brief update on that too. I think I know what Lisa's coming. It's going to get moved outside of the gate in an interim basis to see if we have any illegal dumping, but then that was one of the comments we got from the state of the city, is that they wanted access outside of city hours. So we're going to see how it goes. Gary, it hasn't happened yet, but they're working on getting it moved out of there. So if there's illegal dumping, we'll move it right back in. So we'll just say that.
Yeah.
Well, so, and we can talk about that too, but couple things. It seems odd, and if we could, it would be nice if we can have the contract run January to January, because we always change our fee schedule in January. And so rather than having a change in August, it would be nice if we could extend the current contract through until January of 26 and then have the 5-year renewal, if we can do that.
Absolutely. That's something I could absolutely do.
Yeah, it just makes more sense for us.
I agree. The Jan 1 increase makes so much more sense across the board.
Okay. And then the other question and the other thing I was thinking is, because there might be, who knows, in the next few years, some changes regarding composting or organic recycling, could there be some wording agreement in the contract that would state that we have an option of either opting out or changing the organic portion of it? It's such a small part of it that.
Absolutely. I kind of see where this is coming. I do think within the next 5 years, you guys will be mandated to do curbside organics. It's just what's going to happen in Hennepin County. The grumblings have kind of started right now. I believe it's 10,000 cities with a population of 10,000 are required to provide curbside.
Right.
It's going to move to 5,000. I don't know when.
But we're going to move to
Yeah,
10,000.
we-
We're probably going to be hitting 10,000 within that 5 year.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we have some flexibility, and who knows what will happen, but I think that would be a good idea.
I mean, either way you want to approach it, we could add it relatively easily, or you could have that just be a separate thing. And yes, we would remove the organics dumpsters you have now. So that is absolutely not a problem.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I mean, even a thought was offering, yeah, anyhow, we'll talk about
I
that
tried
later.
to reference that in the memo that probably there would be some subsequent, discussions and whether we would address it in this contract or just know that if obviously the county would mandate any changes, we'd have to, basically.
Well, it should be noted in the contract then too, so that would.
No, I absolutely agree. We could keep the two separate, or it could be tacked in. I know we just recently did, an add-on in Brooklyn Park and the HRG communities where we provide curbside organics for them. I think in all the larger Hennepin County cities now, they've already taken that step, I think, with the exception of Eden Prairie.
Okay.
But that's something that's easy. We already have the model built. The pricing you would see would be very similar to what you would see. I know Long Lake just adopted this. Brooklyn Park, Crystal, New Hope. That's kind of the pricing structure you guys would see as well.
Okay. Questions?
More to that. So we're going to have to pay for organics recycling unit if we're not using it?
But you should use it.
Right, but what about the residents who are gone for 4 months of the year? So they're going to get this tacked on to their other bills?
That's why I thought we could talk about it again, but we're already paying for it now. It's included. It's only about 11,000, no.
It's about $100 a month right now.
Yeah.
So JC $1,200 based on the frequency we have for the drop set right now.
No, I'm saying like when it switches to curbside.
Well, that's why I want a clause in the contract that gives us even a complete out if we have another option. Maybe we can move to offering kind of like the rain barrels where people can have their own composting bin. I mean, I'm just throwing some ideas out. We haven't talked about it yet, but I just would like the composting part to be almost a separate paragraph that we could opt out if we wanted to. It's so minor that it's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely see what you're saying. Not opt out of the recycling portion, but of the organics portion. That's
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, right now it's a dumpster, so
Yeah.
that's not a problem at
Yeah.
all.
Or you're saying maybe if they would, is it where if it goes to where we hit the threshold where there's 10,000 population, where we put that on the garbage haulers then potentially to do the
No.
curbside? You're not looking at that more.
No, I'm
I was just-
looking at it, if you wanted to do it on your own, maybe we would offer some incentive for, like the rain barrel, where people can buy their own composting bin.
Okay.
And maybe we subsidize it because we have to, what I'm saying? So it's something like that. We'll talk about that when we get to there. But I just want that to be a little separate paragraph that would give us that option of either doing curbside with them. That would make most sense to do it with waste management versus another different one, because then you might have 3 haulers. We don't want that. I mean,
What I've seen too is, and it's not just us, pretty much if you organize your organics, your individual homes will pay less.
Yeah.
From what I've seen in the subscription markets, rates vary much more and they tend to be higher.
Right. So otherwise, any other comments or questions?
For the price increase in this contract, the 4 and change per year, what's historically been the increase? Is that high? Is that normal? Is it low?
That's been pretty normal for the 3 to 5% in a normal market. I know back when we updated the contract back in 2020, the rates were all over the place, and I think there was something to do with the market not being good in China, not wanting the materials. Or there was a lot of flexibility where I know back in 2020 our rate went from like $3.50 to $4.95, and we even looked around at other communities and with other haulers, and it wasn't going to matter what one we went with. So we had a big jump in 2020, but then ever since
We hadn't had a jump. It had been pretty level for 5 or 6 years or whatever. And then in 2020, there was a pretty significant jump.
Yeah.
it had been like 350 for who knows how long, quite a few years. And then in 2020, when we redid the contract, it upped. And that was kind of a quote unquote sticker shock because it went up that much.
Yeah.
But it hadn't gone up for 5 years, so.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah,
Average it out almost. It's
Yeah.
getting about a.
Right.
my only concern would be if we're locking in rates during kind of a high inflation period, if we're locking.
That's a good thing though, right?
Well, I guess if the current increase is higher than normal and we lock that higher than normal rate in for 5 years, is that better? Or is it, I guess my only concern would be, are we locking in historically high rates with a longer term contract at this point?
Yeah, I mean, if I may weigh in, there's a couple different ways you probably know. We could follow CPI, which that could also go against us if we hit some high CPI numbers over the next 5 years. So I think there's a lot of estimating going on what they project it to be. I think it's probably within the range of being safe. You know, we'd like to see it lower, but that's kind of where the market is going, it seems like.
But yeah.
I could say, well, I was around in 2020 when I think the original contract in 2015 was around. I was in the industry, but I owned a small garbage company at the time. Recycling rates were tremendous back then. Everyone was getting rebates and it was great. Around 2020, it turned where all of a sudden you went from getting a rebate to paying in substantially for the material. So I think you guys were victims of the good and the bad in your last two renewals. Right now, I will say the commodities have stabilized. After the 2020, the China sword, everything kind of stabilized except processing costs. They kind of went up and they've stayed up, but we are getting cleaner material because of that. So that's the one good side of it. More materials being recycled and it's cleaner versus what we were doing in the past. I will say always locally here, we kind of keep stuff internalized. The market stays here. But China did affect the majority of the country who ships most of their stuff, across the Pacific. So,
Which they might not be doing now.
Tariffs on garbage, yeah.
Okay, so then I think just bring this back at the next council meeting under consent agenda with that change from August to January.
With that, and then as well as that little paragraph on
Yeah.
the organics, if something changes, it gives us an option to renegotiate or
opt out, renegotiate, whatever, yeah.
and it's such a small thing. I mean, I could pull that out of the contract now that we're currently servicing just the dumpsters. I mean, it's.
Well, I want to make sure if we have to continue doing the dumpsters that we still get that low $1,200 a month. So I want it both ways.
Like I said, I won't lose any sleep if we lose the dumpster collection. I mean, I'd like to keep doing it, but and we're happy. I mean, I think it's been very low. I've never heard of any contamination.
Okay,
any
good.
stuff that we've picked up here. I know we have a couple in Orono as well that
Okay,
I hear nothing about. So that's always good.
okay.
just make those.
Well, thank you for coming and
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for being late.
that's fine. All right. So next item on our agenda is code of contact. Code of
There's a
conduct.
typo. I don't know if it was autocorrect or what, but this is supposed to be code of conduct.
Yes.
This is something that we were going to talk about at the last meeting, kind of driven, I would say, by the elected officials. I don't know if Lisa, you want to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of cities are doing if they don't have it. And I think it's been determined like, hey, we're all kind of getting along right now. Let's do it now and get it set up. And then it's there.
I just want to make sure this isn't an issue with our council, okay? It has nothing to do with our council, but as Jasper said, we do know another community where this might have been an issue, and I'm not going to mention any names. And so I've talked to other mayors and other communities around here, and a lot of them, I was surprised, already have a code of conduct, and we don't. And so I thought, well, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea now that we're good council and all appropriate, we don't do anything bad like this. It would maybe be good to adopt something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also recommend that we send this to our planning commission and that they review it and give us their feedback. And then it's a policy. So it's not an ordinance, so it would just be a policy. And as you know, in here, as you went through it, we can't ask, if there ever were a council member that did something against the policy, we can't really enforce it, but we can try and point to it and say, hey, this is a policy that we have. And we can't remove somebody from the council. But we could remove somebody from a commission.
You can't, so our commission members are all at-will volunteer commission members. Going back to the city council, the most that really the mayor has the power to do is just not recognize a council member to speak at a meeting that's, censuring them. That's the most that we can do. You can't get, like Mayor Whalen said, you can't kick somebody off. That's up to the public to, if they want to recall, or, there's processes for all these things. But really, it's just kind of a reminder, hey, we're
Here's the thing.
Professionals. We need to act in a professional manner.
Okay. Brian, did you have any questions or any comments regarding the?
No, that seems a positive thing.
Well, can I just say something?
Yeah.
If it can't be enforced, why don't we just draw up something when someone becomes a city council member and they sign it? I'll behave.
No, because
So they're elected and it wouldn't matter.
they're elected and, exactly. It's just, again, it's just,
That's what this is too.
yeah, but it's also for our commissioners.
I see.
And then we can, if a commissioner, and I've heard from other cities that there have been commissioners in those cities that have maybe violated some of these things. This would give us some, hey, look, you've done this. This is wrong. This is our policy. We expect you to abide by it. And then if they did it again, we would have reason to remove them. Now, again, with the council, we can't remove a council member, but we can point them to the policy saying, hey, this is our policy. This is passed by the council. You need to abide by it. So again, it's a good thing to have.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
But it kind of sounds like, but it's not really holding any water. So why are we spending any time on it? But I understand. Thank you.
Okay. So if you're okay with this language, and I'm sure Sarah has weighed in.
Correct. Yeah, this came from Sarah.
And other communities too, and the LMC has, different ones. But anyhow, then we'll pass it on to the next planning commission. They can weigh in, make changes if they feel needed, and then bring it back and we can just do it under consent, or do you want to do it under business item?
Yep, I think we'd bring it back if there's any significant changes that are recommended from, and I take it we want to bring it to the planning and the park.
Yeah,
Get input from both of them.
Yeah.
And then if there's any significant changes, we'll put it on business. And then if there aren't, we'll put it on consent. It's basically what we have here.
My only question is, see, the park commission doesn't meet very often.
Correct.
So I would hate to have to wait another year.
David's nodding in agreement over there.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of missed the window where they both met last month.
Right.
The next park meeting, depending on anything that they might have to take up, it might be something to do with Halsted.
Right. How about we do this? Take it to the next planning and or the next park commission meeting. If the park commission isn't meeting for another 3 to 4 months, then we'll just do planning commission and come back and we'll share it with the park commission.
Sure.
Is that, I think that's a better approach rather than waiting 6 months or whatever. So,
It almost.
Yeah.
It's so uncontroversial.
Yeah.
I almost think we should just make a motion and pass it. But you really think I say, make a motion and pass and check it off the box.
That's fine.
I don't think
Okay.
it's too controversial.
I wouldn't think so. No. Okay. I mean, if you want to do that.
Motion.
Okay, well, Claudia, what we'll do is we'll bring it back at the next meeting. We can do consent,
All right.
under consent.
Great.
And then what we'll do is we'll share it with the planning and the park commission.
Sure.
How
And
about
if
that?
they have comments, we can always amend it. It's fine.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty.
and again, I just want to emphasize it's nothing that we're doing wrong.
And better we
Just for the record.
place now than
Yeah.
something is going.
Exactly. All right. So St. Bonifacius interconnect discussion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is just a brief discussion, kind of an update on this. I think most are aware that we installed a in partnership with St. Bonifacius, an interconnect meter at one location between the two cities. There's 4 total locations that we share a water main that go between, and we have the ability to open them up from time to time. And we have in the past, in 2021, 2022, there were drought years, and we've had to kind of help each other out. One thing with that is we don't know how much water is going back and forth between the cities. And this is problematic when we're doing our water appropriations report to the DNR, because if we lose water, we kind of write it off as, we just don't know. And there's generally 10% or less is fine. But if it would be more than that, then they might start asking some questions, and then we kind of estimate. Installing some meters between the two cities will allow us to maybe collaborate a little bit more on water usage. It's becoming a pretty hot topic. And I guess this is kind of a heads up that St. Bonnie already talked to their city council about it, because we had talked to their mayor and he thought, yeah, this is a good idea. They're on board with doing something to do on the other interconnects. Now, we had a meeting with AE2S last week, and they're going to look at, do we actually need to have all 4 metered? Because maybe only 1 or 2 would be enough to actually serve both communities, maybe 3. If we don't have to do all 4, that's money savings for both communities. And then if there was ever some extreme emergency situation, we could open up the 4th or 3rd or whatever it is. So this is just kind of a touch point with our city council to say, hey, this is something that we're looking at. There will likely be, if you guys are nodding, which I see some nods, future task order to have AE2S kind of develop the plans. We told St. Bonnie, hey, we want to kind of run the show on this, because the previous one was done by the St. Bonnie engineers, and they kind of just, shot from the hip a little bit. We're still trying to get as-builts of the actual meter and how it was installed. So we want to.
Was the one on
Glacier.
Glacier, yeah.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that if we're going to do it, because in the agreement that we have, we're the ones that are going to be maintaining these connections and these meters. We want to make sure that we know how they're built and they're built correctly and they can integrate into our SCADA system correctly. So the previous one, just for reference with St. Bonnie, was just under $50,000 to put it in and install. That was in 2023, I believe. And then the future ones we're going to look at, they're a little bit, a couple of them, depends on where they have to be. A couple of them are in the right of way, some are in the road. So there's some different things. But what we're going to do is, if it's okay with the group, we're going to look at a model to see how many we need to do, and then develop some plans for them, and then see what the cost is, and maybe try to pick, depending on the cost and the appetite of the city council, pick one off a year or something like that over time. So we can get them in place. The idea, the grand scheme of this thing is that we can partner with St. Bonnie to potentially get enough water in our system to expedite the maintenance of the Kings Point Tower. Maybe do it in 2026 instead of 2028. So move it up 2 years. Now you guys have to approve this, and it's right now estimated at $900,000. In a couple of years, it might be cresting $1 million. So, but in,
And
3
keep
years,
in
it might
mind,
be
it was
more.
$500,000 to do the North Water Treatment, North Tower.
Yeah.
It was
So,
around
Tear it
$500,000.
down and build a new tower at this
Yeah,
point.
really.
well, that's probably about a $4 or $5 million endeavor. So it's better to just repaint it. So that's kind of the grand scheme, to maybe try to expedite the maintenance. We just got the tower inspected. We've got the inspection report back about 2 weeks ago, and they're recommending maintenance within a year, but we can't do that. So it'll have to be at least 2.5 to 3 years based on the current schedule with the plant and all that. So
What maintenance?
just the painting, the sandblasting of the interior, and the repainting of the out exterior. It's
But isn't there other stuff too that needs to be done? I thought,
on the tower.
yeah.
We're going to put in, I forget, there's a valve that the auto valve that makes sure that the level is, we're going to do a couple of those things too.
Right.
But the big thing is the painting
The
of
painting,
it, and
right.
it won't be rusty anymore. And, we're going to talk about maybe putting the logo on it.
Yes.
But not before it's painted.
Yeah.
We don't want people to know.
There's one on 44, and then what's the other side of the other side of 110? It's Edgewood. Is that what it's called? Edgewood. It's kind of at 44, 110, and then it's something else. Right over Commerce.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the Sunnyfield Tower? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about leaving here, going towards Mound.
Yep.
Turning left. And if you went right, you'd be on County Road 44. If you go left, it's Edgewood.
Oh, Halsted.
Oh, the Mound one? The one in Mound?
It's a Mound Tower.
Yeah, that's a Mound.
Thank you. That's in Mound. That tower, I don't think has been painted in 40 or 50 years, and it has no rust on it. So who did that tower? I mean, it's as powder blue as it was the day they put it in.
Yeah.
And I think whoever did this tower did a medium job. So if we pay $1 million,
Is there water?
No, I don't know. I mean,
if we pay $1 million to redo a tower, they need to guarantee that we're not repainting it again in 10 years or 20
yeah.
years.
Well, generally,
That thing is 40 years old. It looks spectacular.
yeah, I'm not sure about the history. Maybe Gary knows, but you get the movement of the water up and down. It creates condensation. That condensation, the
Whatever.
cool, that's what gives
Okay,
drives the
so-
rust.
If that's, so
mile
what
down the
happened,
road.
yeah, but what happened, so that tower on Kings Point Road was put in the 90s before any development was there. There were times where we actually had to aerate it, and Gary, you can chime in here, but we had to aerate it in order for it not to freeze because there
Correct.
wasn't enough usage.
Interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason.
So maybe, yeah, maybe
to figure
that's
that out.
right. No,
Yeah,
but
we can
maybe
look
that's
at
what
it. I
kind
mean-
of caused a premature, I don't know, but.
There's been some, coating technology changes too. It should be pretty good. But generally, you look at it after 15 years, you hope it gets to 20 and maybe 25. But you kind of look at it and you get it inspected every 10 years or so. So you get an idea of what's happening. Because the interior is also very important, and that paint can come down and then you get some corrosion and things like that. You don't want that happening.
I don't know. Maybe Gary can figure out why that one looks so good and it's so old. It's older
Maybe it doesn't
than.
even have any water in it.
It
We don't
does.
know.
Maybe it's lead.
Yeah, he's lit.
But, so,
Anywho,
yeah, so the purpose of this is just to kind of plant the seed to see if you guys are all right with this interconnect kind of project. If you are, then you'll likely see a future task order with AE2S to kind of pick away at this. And then depending on the cost, there'll be another touch point where you can decide at which pace we would replace or add these meters to the interconnects.
And so we would pay for the install and engineering and all of that, kind of an upfront cost. And then when we use their water, we would be credited or given, if not free water, because we paid for it in another sense, but then we would receive credits. So then what we'll have to do is we'll have to just figure out what that cost per 1,000 gallons is going to be to us.
I thought you said 50 or wasn't it?
Yeah. So I think Brian's looking at the invoice. It was for like 23,000.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what they charged us, which was half of what
Okay,
the total was. So
Paid
they were
half.
like 46,000 for the previous one.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. And likely in that agreement, there will be a sunset clause so that it's not just in perpetuity that they maybe owe us a little, or they owe us a little bit of money. It'll be, maybe after 10 years, they make everything right.
Okay.
And, a lot can happen in 10 years. Maybe we use a lot of their water and it works out.
Right.
But we're kind of, getting it done, working with a neighboring community, and it'll help both of the communities out potentially in the future, to be able to share that system and know what's going on and where the water's moving. Because right now we just maybe know, but
And
we
it's
don't really know.
good to do that with St. Bonnie because they also have treated water.
Yes.
They have
We also have interconnects with Mound, but
We
we
don't like to
don't.
open those.
We don't like to.
We don't like to open them.
Gary cringes.
Yes, I do.
So I know in the claims, there's a sewer service flow to St. Bonnie. Explain that.
There's a shared sewer line that they meter that we have to pay for. It's our sewage that goes through one of their lines and their meters, but it's just an accounting.
But
thing.
it is metered. So
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
what. how
So it's just
much-
one of those weird infrastructure pieces that we don't have a way of metering it. They do it for us.
Wait, what are they quoting on? Or I know it's in the future, but the Kings Point Tower. I know, I was just curious. The Sunnyfield Tower was 470,000 back.
I said
in
500.
Yeah, Aaron was right.
There's
So
no way it's
so this-
over doubled in price.
yeah, that seems a little.
I don't know. We got Gary on here. I think he told me 900,000, but maybe I'm wrong.
And that was just the estimate that they did. I mean, the interior work is going to be immensely a lot. So
And it's a larger tower than the Sunnyfield. a
No,
little
it's
bit.
not. How big is?
400,000 and 250.
Oh, 250. Okay, I was thinking it was
A little bit-
300.
a little bit bigger.
Okay,
Yeah, 300 and 400.
that's what I thought.
Gary, what's the immense work that needs to be done on the inside?
There's a lot of pitting taking place. There's a lot of drip lines in there that are not, that when constructed, they allow water to pocket in there. So there's a lot of rust buildup that's going to need to be taken care of and re-welded, and some plates, new plates put in. I don't have the report for me, but I know they said there's a lot along the drip line edge that has to take place on it to assure that this doesn't, the areas where the water's building up doesn't pool again and start to rust again as fast as this was doing.
Was it just not made well?
It's,
I mean,
That
that's,
tower was actually really good for the last, I mean, for up to 20 years, it was looking great. It's just, this has just gone that bad, since it started to rust in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's when it's
Gary,
really.
it's been like 10 years. It's been way more than that, Gary.
if
If you look at it, I mean, it wasn't that bad back 5-6 years ago. It was not that bad compared to, what it is now.
Right, well,
I think it's your definition of not that bad.
obviously it's worse now than it was before, but if it was built in the mid 90s, it's 30 years old, so without any work on it, so that's not too bad, but yeah. So maybe what we can, once we get these interconnects done, maybe we can look at what the opportunities or options might be to do it sooner than later.
and we bid it out, it's well above the bidding threshold.
Yeah,
So we bid,
Are
it'd be
there
a
a
bidding.
lot of vendors that do that?
There's a
Or,
few.
is it like the well one where you're like, hey, look, Trout's doing it?
Yeah, there's.
There might even be out of state, but there might be out of state companies. So the company that did the tower on Highway 7, that was an out of state company. Gary, weren't they from like Illinois, Indiana?
Oklahoma. Most of
Okay.
the tower companies are down south or in the Midwest
Texas.
because of the year-round work they can do down there. I mean, there's not too many from up in this area just because it is such a finite, seasonal type project area. There's not a lot that they can do around here. So.
Well, tell them we'll provide housing.
That'd be staying at your place.
I mean, there's a wonderful luxury apartment there, that they can.
Well, I guess with this item, we're just looking to see if it's all right if we proceed with a future task order and then kind of pick away at this and hopefully get to the point where we can maybe expedite. Yeah, we've been kind of brainstorming, how do we get this tower done sooner than 2028?
Right.
This is one of the solutions. So.
It would be nice, even if we could get it done 2026 would be good.
Yeah, I think that'd be the quickest that we could do. If
And if we're going to be bonding for 22 million, unfortunately, we might as well add another million. Oh, geez. Anyhow.
You said about the plant with the well.
Yeah, it all affects the rate, so we'll have that conversation here soon.
Yeah, and how will that go with the St. Bonnie? We're not going to pay our top tier rate like they were talking about.
We'll have to talk. We'll have to figure that out.
It's not happening.
We'll have to figure that out.
So far, I've been very impressed with Mayor Eiler. He's very willing to work with us, negotiate, and there's some things that they want that we might be able to give them. Change. So we'll in exchange. So we'll be talking about that.
So yeah, you'll likely see a future task order from A2S regarding the interconnect meters.
Okay. So next, popular, back by popular demand, we have the chicken discussion.
Should we do this without Peter? Excuse me, he was one of the no votes.
Well, let me throw out an option. Okay, let me just throw out an option. It would be a compromise. It would be a compromise for the yes votes and it'd be a compromise for the no votes. But here's what I would suggest. Obviously, staff does not want to do permitting. So we're not going to do permitting.
Agreed.
But if we did chickens and we said, and this would be to start with, and we can see how it goes. And if there's not a lot of rumbling and not a lot of complaints, we can then take another look at it maybe a year and a half from now. But we start out with a minimum of 1 acre. This is the compromise. We allow chickens in all zoning districts. Of course, they're already allowed in the other ones. And then we say you have to have a minimum of 1 acre. You can have 3 chickens. That's the max. And they have to be totally enclosed. That way they don't run into other people's yards and so on. That would be a compromise on your part. It would be a compromise on your part. We would get it done. We'd see how it goes. And then maybe if there's no complaints and people like it, then we could narrow it down and say half acre. Okay? I mean, that's my proposal.
With the
Yeah.
greatest respect,
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
and I do have the greatest respect for you. I have done so much research on this, including I spoke to St. Bonnie today. I almost fell over when I found out that our dear neighbors, St. Bonifacius, totally allow chickens. Who knew? You were keeping that a secret from me.
No, I didn't know that. I don't ask.
But to the point, it doesn't matter what other cities.
I have the microphone.
Hold on.
Okay,
Let
so-
Claudia finish.
St. Bonnie totally allows chickens. Every single person, by the way, they put their phone on speaker. There were 5 people. They said they have received virtually no complaints. Now, I'm just going to land this plane really quick. And by the way, thank you for that compromise. And I hear you and I don't hate it, but I did want to say just a couple of things. I have bad neighbors, not bad neighbors. There are people that walk in my street every single day and their dogs go on my lawn every single day. It doesn't mean they don't pick it up, but I really don't want to walk in it and it wrecks my lawn. Dogs are worse than chickens. Dog complaints are bigger than chickens. And Kathleen, if that housing bill gets passed, you're going to have rotted boats and trailers and way more problems than chickens piling up in yards. And you have an HOA. You don't need to worry about these little chickens. They are not going to bother you, I promise. And the 1 acre, again, let's look at the reality of these other cities. 1 acre is a big lot. My lot is a very big lot.
43,560 square feet.
My lot is big and I wouldn't be able to have chickens. I have a very big yard. And so it kind of comes down to, are you a good neighbor or are you a bad neighbor? Another thing is I was here pounding my fist saying, eggs are expensive. Let people get, chickens are expensive. This is not a cheap little hobby. So people that do this are going to want, I mean, this is a big commitment. It's expensive. The people that are educating me about this cause, which now I'm totally on the bandwagon, they want to go out, they want to teach their kids how to be responsible, clean up after an animal, take care of it. So I really think the 1 acre is too much. I would say, first of all, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I really don't. I say we go half acre and 4 chickens. It can't be visible from your neighbor's yard.
That would be difficult on a small lot.
Everything is visible on a half acre lot from your neighbor's yard.
Well, I think it's fair, especially because I asked our neighbors and they all laughed. In fact, they invited me to move to St. Bonnie. And I mean, when you look at St. Bonnie, Minnetonka, Edina, Minneapolis, we're in Minnetrista for Pete's sake. I would say, can I compromise and go half acre, 4 chickens, no roosters, and in a year, I will eat crow if there's a big problem. I will be the person that joyfully knocks on someone's door and says, you know what, your neighbors are mad. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I think we should just land this plane.
Okay, Brian?
Do we have a swag on what percentage of the residential lots would qualify for chickens at 1 acre? I'm just concerned whether this would be a big enough sample size to figure out whether.
Oh, if I may, there's a couple different components. There's residential lots that are outside of an HOA that don't allow chickens, right? There's a lot that have HOA or that do allow. There are a lot of HOAs, most that don't allow chickens.
And they're protected.
So we'd have to probably, if you're looking at how many lots does this possibly affect, we could do an analysis. I don't think it's probably that many. If you take into account HOA bylaws as well that don't allow chickens. I'm not sure if David has a better estimate. I mean, I don't know if we're talking about 200 lots, 500 lots of, residential lots that this would affect. I know that the letter that you have, the Joe Rogers letter, it would affect his lot. He's got a little over an acre. So he would be part of the acre group. But there aren't that many of those. And then he's in Turtle Creek. Turtle Creek allows chickens, but Woodland Cove doesn't. Hunter's Crest doesn't.
Okay.
Not sure about Red Oak. We don't know like the details of the HOA bylaws. So if we're looking for a representative sample, I don't think we know exactly.
I think that if you look at developments, older developments like Turtle Creek, South and North Saunders, they're going to have a little bit bigger lots because I think back in the day you were allowed to have bigger lot for MUSA, for our Metropolitan Council. We were at like two units per acre. So some of them might be, and then when you look at some of them in the northeast corner of Minnetrista, those might have bigger lots. I'm not sure about acre, but there's probably, if you're looking for sampling, there's probably not that many.
Sunnyfield, Sunnybrook they have larger lots. I don't know if any.
I don't know if any of them are acres.
I mean, I'd say the ones in Saunders, there's probably maybe
2 or 3.
15% of them. I mean, there's some of them go out into the lake,
Right.
that are pretty
So
big. But I'd say out of there's probably maybe 12 or 15 that could have chickens with the 1 acre. You go down to half, that increases quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
I don't think people are going to run out. It's expensive and it's a big hobby. I don't think we're going to have a rush on people putting chickens in their yard.
Probably not. I mean,
So,
wait, hold on. Let Brian.
Sorry, Brian.
Because I'm sorry.
Well, so maybe half an acre might be a more reasonable sample size than to test to see whether this is working.
Okay, I could go half acre, 3 chickens.
Half acre, 3 chickens.
Going once, going twice.
Give me that gavel.
Okay, hold on.
So I just want to say, we have an ordinance for a reason. And when a resident moves here from another town, it's not reasonable that they expect us to change our ordinances to make Minnetrista like their previous community that they moved from. We have a new resident who wants chickens, but just because one resident wants them,
It's a lot.
No, hold on. No, let Kathleen finish. Okay.
one resident who has emailed us asking for this should not cause us to change or alter our ordinances. Relying on an HOA to prevent chickens in certain areas, it's not the responsibility of a council. You need to look at the overall town because, as we all know, the legislature is looking at taking away HOA's power. So you can't just go, well, you have an HOA, so you don't have to worry about it, because the people in St. Paul want to take away that. So you have to look at it holistically in the whole community of what we've allowed. People moved here and they may like or not like our current restrictions, but it's not fair to the residents that have been here long-term to now go, oh, suddenly your neighbor can have chickens. They haven't been allowed, but someone new moved in and now they want it. I mean,
a bit of a, how do you say, devil's advocate here. Most of the time when you move into a community, you don't think to yourself, oh, I'm going to check and make sure that all these things, I'm not going to check all the ordinances.
Right.
And also, you might not even think in terms of you want chickens. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got 3. So
yes, I'm fine. If we want to move it to 3 acres, fine. We have a set part of this community for agricultural, for animals, for farm animals.
We have 3 acre lots that are in the residential zoning area that aren't allowed to have chickens. Not a lot, but there are some. So anytime you're in the MUSA, so for instance, basically, I don't know how many parcels there are currently in the MUSA, but as long as you're in the MUSA, you might not have your land developed, but yet you can't have chickens. In other words, so the guy over there that owns the 50 acres by Hunter's Crest, if he wanted to build one house and have chickens, he couldn't because it's in a residential, it's zoned residential.
Yeah, but he's got more than 10. If you have more than 10, you can.
Oh, more than 10. Okay.
But imagine if he had 9.5 and was told he couldn't have chickens. That's insane.
I mean, I understand your point, Kathleen. I really do.
How many dogs can people have? We have an ordinance on that.
Or you can have up to 4, right? I think it's 4 without a kennel license.
Permit them anymore. Yeah.
Right,
so
except for if you had more than 4, wouldn't you have to get a kennel license?
Well, we don't permit them anymore.
So- Okay,
That would be a
We
state or
don't,
county.
yeah,
Well-
we don't, we got out of that business.
yeah, okay.
And have you had more legal action against the city with dogs barking or chickens?
One going on, well, I can't say specific, I don't know. Chickens, I guess we checked with police and it doesn't.
Doesn't seem to be a problem.
Sound like it's come up, but yeah, so, but Jasper and I were talking earlier, I mean, golf carts,
Right.
we don't say you can or can't, and there's kind of this unofficial rule that, so I don't, and that's my understanding, that's how St. Bonnie treats their chickens. They don't have an ordinance.
They have no ordinance.
Correct.
Right.
Just like we don't really either. I mean, you could look at what we do right now that same way.
I don't think so. It says no fowl, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
It does say no chickens.
No, it says farm animals are allowed in the certain districts,
Oh, I see. But they don't have,
the ag preserve districts, and residential if you have 10 acres or not. So as the gentleman, I think the one gentleman that's bringing this up, it doesn't say you can't have chickens, right? So there's some ambiguity there about how you interpret that. So I would argue that we currently how we do it, because as you pointed out, people do have chickens that aren't supposed to, and we haven't done anything about that. That's what St. Bonnie does.
no, I spoke to them. They said nowhere does it say, because right now if I went and got a chicken, I would be violating Minnetrista's permit, ordinances. Correct.
And so would they in St. Bonnie.
No, they said that is not correct.
So they have an ordinance that says you may have chickens.
No, they have nothing that says,
So that's technically.
they have an ordinance that says you can't have animals with hooves.
Yeah, so St. Bonnie's silent on chickens. We're pretty much silent. We don't specifically say that you can or can't have them in residential areas. I think it's in the definition of what a farm animal is, and that includes that. And farm animals aren't allowed in residential areas. I think that's the kind of tie.
Oh.
So I think that's the way I interpret it. But it's not explicitly said in St. Bonnie that you could have or you can't have chickens. In ours, it's not explicitly said, but it's tied to the definition of what a farm animal
Well,
is.
I just know that there are multiple people that are residents of Minnetrista that want the city to let them have chickens. And they're willing to follow the rules. They want to follow the rules. Because one council member is adamantly against it and doesn't have to worry about it because she has an HOA. Love you.
Peter doesn't want them either.
Well,
He's not here.
He's not here, but that's what happens in Washington. You don't show up, you don't get to vote. You know what? I'm sorry, but that's reality. And so we're spending too much time on chicken talk.
Sure.
It's chicken. Let's do this. Let's pass this and wait a year and I'll, eat crow. I was going to bring you out.
Let me ask another question. This is a land use issue, so, no? Okay. I was going to say, has the planning commission weighed in on it?
No.
Oh, geez,
Well,
okay.
I think actually, Claudia, they did a little bit.
They loved it. They all wanted chickens.
And I do know, one of the
100%.
planning commissioners was at the State of the City address and said, we would really like to have chickens. And she's not on a small lot.
It was unanimous.
So anyhow, but I think if it's allowed, it should have certain criteria. So they have to be completely enclosed.
And you can't see them from your neighbor's home.
Agreed.
And, okay,
I love it.
that would then eliminate the small lots, which is.
I say, I think we think a half acre is fair. My lot is very large and I could find plenty of places where no one would see a chicken. I'm not getting a chicken, by the way. I wanted one until I found out how much work it is. And so,
All right, so we're going to say 3 chickens, totally enclosed, half acre or more.
invisible, it can't be smelly, it has to be clean.
And be seen by their
And
neighbors.
Kathleen Ruffkin is going to visit your home.
But I think that would also eliminate most of the smaller development.
So when we say can't be seen, the structure can't be seen
For
or the
Pete's
actual?
sake.
No, because
You hate chickens.
No, I don't think she does.
Okay.
But
okay,
she's,
my cousins in Wisconsin have chickens. I have nothing against chickens.
I'm just kidding.
so But
No,
that's a
it's
good
legitimate
question. It's a
The structure
legitimate
can't be
question.
seen, or the chickens themselves can't be seen.
Let's just say you have, well, that gets, you know what? That kind of gets into you say what you want. What would you want? Because it gets into then, well, an enforcement issue too.
Well, that is, and if we don't have permits and we don't have authorization to enter the property through the permit process, we won't be able to even go onto the property to see and examine and do those things.
But how are we going to enforce it?
How about on the back of the
Well, wait a
property?
second though. If we don't have access to the property, if there's a complaint and you can't go, so like, let's say my neighbor puts in 5 chickens and they're roaming around his yard. He won't allow you on the property. How do we enforce the ordinance then?
We're not doing free range.
Yeah, so if that's the case and the chickens need to be enclosed, right, in a coop, and we see chickens running around the yard, we can see that from the right of way. That'd be our way of enforcing it. We could take a picture of that and say, oh, you're in violation of the code, send a letter. That's how we would do that. But without a permit, we don't have access to the site, because the permits generally you say, hey, if we have access to the site. So if we don't have permits, then we can't access the site and explicitly look in there and count your chickens and do those things. So that's why the staff is recommending to do like kind of a soft launch on the chickens and not have a bunch of regulations that without a permit that we can't really enforce. We're trying to keep it narrow enough to.
If it became a problem, then we could say, okay, if you want chickens, you need a permit. Those that already have it have to come in and get a permit.
Yep.
If it becomes a problem.
It's similar to like if there's a code violation, we send a letter. Most of the time they communicate with us and we can work through and find a resolution. Sometimes we don't, and then we end up having to go through other processes, but it would be similar. It'd be a code violation. They get a letter and we'd hope that they work through it with us, just like if somebody's operating a business in town and we say, hey, you're violating that. So
Why wouldn't we permit them then?
'Cause
Other than
yeah,
staff
well,
time?
it's a pain in the butt.
Okay, other than staff time, why is it a pain in the butt?
Because, well, time and
I
then,
mean, Minneapolis permits them? What towns permit them?
Minnetonka, Minneapolis, off the top of my head. None of the lake communities do permits. Those are the ones I know for sure. Eden Prairie does not permit them. Edina, I think they do a permit.
So again, fully realizing it's more staff time, I'll agree to chickens on half acres if we permit them, because then we'll know how many people are actually doing this.
What problem does a permit solve?
We'd know how many people are actually having chickens on their property. And then if a neighbor complains and says they got 6 chickens, you can be like, oh, no, they have a permit for 3. We can go look.
How
Or
many
whatnot.
neighbors have, my point is we're not getting complaints and there's a ton of chickens out there. So why make more work? Because if you've got chickens, you're not going to go, oh, you know what, I'm going to go to stop in City Hall and permit these chickens. People aren't going to permit them.
If they're worried about following the
12 months
ordinance,
goes
then
by
they
like
will.
this.
but, okay,
12 months goes by like that.
I think if I had to ask staff, would you want us to permit or not? I think staff would say no. We don't want to permit.
it's up to city council, but we would prefer, we don't have any mechanisms in place to
Really.
facilitate the permits. We don't really have any permit processes for this type of thing. We obviously do building permits, but not these kind of, one-off.
And then we did get rid of the dog licensing or permitting, if you will, because it was just a pain and staff time. And then, but also people had to come to City Hall. They had to fill out the, paperwork and they had to pay a fee. And so I think if you're going to have chickens, just make it easier. I mean, don't belabor, I guess, don't get government so involved in people's lives. That's coming from me. I mean, but, so I'm hearing at least maybe some people would say half acre, 3 chickens completely enclosed.
I'm down with that.
And if possible, let's just say some type of screening from your neighbor. How's that? Some type of screening.
You can say total screening from your neighbor.
Yeah. So
I mean, unless they're out on the lake with a, spyglass and they're looking up at your property.
If I may, I think just to make it easier, just they have to be contained to the coop. I mean, you're going to be able to see the coop probably from your neighbor's backyard. If that's a problem, then we have to talk about it. But, screening is something that's challenging. Are you going to make somebody put up an 8-foot fence to not see their chicken coop? I mean, nobody's going to probably have chickens then. But have them contained in the coop. I think we could work with that. Not have them free range.
Right.
They free range in the egg district right now, and we've gotten some complaints about that.
Yeah.
Where, there's chickens on other people's yards and things like that, but that's a different zoning district. But if there's chickens running around, if we,
You don't want them running around because
Yeah.
they will dig in your yard and gardens and stuff. And then that gets into neighbor problems, so.
Would we want a minimum offset from the property line?
I talked to staff about that and they said no, because then it's hard to enforce.
Mhm.
if we don't have a permit, then we can't access the site to measure the
Will we
offset.
permit the coop? Or can they just build whatever structure they want? How does that work?
We wouldn't, it would have to be under square footage.
Under 200 square foot, they won't need a permit.
So they could put it right on the property line next to their neighbor then?
They could
Well, but don't you have to be 10 feet off?
technically, but anything under 200 square feet doesn't need a permit, so we're not out enforcing that.
But if somebody did build
And they complain.
less than 200 square feet and it was like right on the property line, you could go out and say, hey, you have to move it 10 feet off the property line. I mean,
They would get a letter.
They do, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same
Right.
enforcement process.
It'd be the same as if somebody put a
Shed.
utility shed right on the
Yeah.
property line. It'd be handled the same way.
so they have that.
Great.
So,
All right.
well, okay. So this is going to come back for future city council action. It'll be in the form of an ordinance. I want to make sure, I think David has good notes, but 3 chickens, all hens, no roosters, no permits allowed in the residential district in parcels larger than half an acre,
With fully enclosed.
enclosed.
And I mean, and the reason I want fully enclosed is because we do have coyotes out here.
I agreed.
And if they're not top, side, bottom, everything enclosed, those coyotes are going to jump. I mean, seriously?
100%.
So
they're
you're
gonna-
meaning enclosed by a cage,
Yeah.
not a 4 walls.
No,
No.
The cage is fine.
Okay, fully enclosed.
yeah, it has to be a cage.
I mean, raccoons would get in as well.
Yeah, right. And just so you know, chickens lay an egg every single day.
Mhm.
So if you have 3 chickens, you're going to have 3 eggs a day. So,
Right.
21 eggs.
If it all works out. In the winter, they slow way down.
So why, since this is so easy, we've been at this for 8 months.
Because it's an ordinance change. It has to come back.
And it's a change, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah, and-
it'll come back.
It'll come back. It'll be a
Business item?
business item.
Be a business item. It won't be on consent.
On our next meeting.
Yes. So it'll be, what is that? June or May 19th.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
So there you go. So next we're going to talk stormwater. So Claudia, you had some questions on stormwater.
Yeah, at the planning meeting, there were a couple families that came forward and said they were very worried about the runoff. It seemed that they were talking about like from Jen Olson's property across the road coming out of this culvert, they said it was almost like a rapids coming out at certain times of the year. And they were really concerned about having them this big development go in. And I just said, there will be the watershed district, Minnehaha Creek will do some kind of research on this, and so will our engineers. So once
Staff is on
approved-
top of it.
Yeah, the staff is on top of it.
In fact, I'm having a meeting.
Yeah.
And I've been talking with staff.
Yeah.
So it's, so what they have to do, any development that comes along, they have to meet stormwater requirements for rate control, it's called, and also quality. So once that water leaves the stormwater pond and let's say goes into the lake, it has to meet certain qualities as well. And then rate controls. We've been talking about the rate controls ever since day one.
Rate controls?
Yeah, rate control. So, and that's what's happening right now. There is no control. There is just no control there right now. Now, yes, there'll be more water runoff because there's going to be more impervious surfaces, but that'll all be handled with the development. And then when we've had other developments come in, we've really been very, very firm on the fact that they can't impact. So the properties that are along the lake, on Halsted, along that lake, they're the ones that are fearful of being impacted. And so they've always had to come in with good plans not to impact them.
Okay.
Did the planning commission approve that?
Yes. Well,
It was tabled. It'll be picking it back up again potentially at the next one. And then maybe if they get all their stuff in, it might, if they don't, then it might be the June meeting.
They didn't have all their.
no, I'm sorry, they didn't have, they did say they had spoken to the watershed district and that it was all, I mean, they were not, what was his name? Jim Cook, the
Yeah.
developer. He said, oh yes, we've spoken to them. And because I didn't even see in the plans any kind of water,
The,
brown water or whatever you call it. I didn't see anything in there.
Yeah. Well,
the plans aren't quite complete.
Okay.
I think that's why, and that's why it was tabled and it'll be brought back. So they're still missing some engineering parts of it. And when that comes back then, and staff is working with them and they'll be continuing to work with them to make sure that the impacts to those residents is,
Minimal.
is,
Nothing.
well, it shouldn't impact
Won't
them.
impact
Yeah.
them.
There's nothing you can do about Jen's property though. Until Jen's property
Right.
develops, that water's still gonna do what it's gonna do. So
Yeah.
until they're grandfathered in, there's nothing we can make that property owner do. So that's probably
But
still.
the development can't make it worse for the
Well,
people.
they're gonna capture their water. Any of their hard cover, they have to capture that and hold it on site before it can be released to the rate control that Lisa was talking about, the
Mhm.
rate in which it goes into the lake.
I see.
They have to
I see.
control
Thank
that.
you.
Mhm.
And so they can do what they can do with their site, but they have no control or power to do anything. with
I
Jen's
see.
property.
I see. Thank you.
So, if big, huge rain event, I mean, that's still, until she develops and holds it up there, that's still, you just understand that that's still gonna be there, but they're gonna have to meet all the rules and regulations for their site.
Their
what
site.
they
Okay.
can control.
Thank you.
Will they put stormwater drains in then, if they develop that area?
There's different things that, go ahead.
Yeah,
The trailer park site?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, yep.
There'll be stormwater ponds
Yep,
and-
yep.
and drains and catch basins, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll talk and we'll hear more when they come back with a more complete plan, I guess is.
Well, they seem very excited because they're already advertising.
Well, and so here's the thing, I don't know how long some of you haven't been in the community long enough, but first we started out with a trashy trailer park and it was trashy. I mean, it was really trashy. And there's all kinds of rules and regulations surrounding how you can get rid of a trailer park. And it's very, very difficult because and very costly.
Mhm.
And so the city for years was never able to do anything. And then finally, the owner of the trailer park decided to get rid of the trailers and so on. And I mean, unfortunately, I'm not saying all the people were trashy. I'm saying the trailers were trashy, okay? And there were a lot of issues out there with this. So now the trailers are gone and now the lot has been empty for all these years.
Right.
And we've had three or four at least, plans come forward and they've never worked and then they've gone away. And so it really would be nice to get more people on our water system, on our water infrastructure that we're building. So we're going to be looking at that coming up. We have to really we would really like to see something come to fruition there.
Well, the most incredible builders are
Yeah.
involved in this. I hope they
Right.
can make it work.
Yeah, and we're hopeful that they can, so. But that's Stormwater 101. All right. Anything else regarding stormwater? Otherwise, we are at the end of our agenda and we can be adjourned.
so moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. 4.